Are you preparing for the UiPath Agentic certification? If yes, this video is perfect for you. I passed the certification last week, and in this video, I'm going to share with you everything you need to know in order to pass the certification. Welcome to my channel. My name is Sylvain Boutier. I'm a UiPath expert, 4 times UiPath MVP. And in this video, I'm going to share with you my feedback on the exam. I'm going also to tell you how I prepared for this exam, and we are going to do together the practice test. Are you ready? Let's do it. Let me first start by talking about the certification itself. And here, I guess you are either coming from the UiPath world, you were working on RPA in the past and you want to upskill to Agentic. And of course, the certification is a very good opportunity for you to show that you master those new skills. Or you may be coming from the GenAI world and you want to get certified on an agentic automation platform such as UiPath. This certification is also a good option for you because you know all the basics. You will just need to develop your skills on the UiPath platform. If you look at the certification, so here on the certification webpage from UiPath, you can see that there are a lot of certifications already around, but also there are two different levels. You have the associate level and the professional level for the certifications. So the agentic automation, for the time being, we have only the associate level for this one. Associate is the entry level. Professional is much more difficult in my experience. This means that this certification is perfectly doable. You will need to have a basic understanding and not a deep understanding on the UiPath agentic tools. What you can also notice if you look at the certifications is that we have some certifications that are for a specific role in the automation project. You have a certification for the business analyst role, automation developer role, solution architect. And by the way, if you're interested in those certifications, I have a video to help you prepare the business analyst one. The agentic automation is not a certification about a specific role. That means you're going to get technical questions, but you're also going to get questions that would be more for a business analyst role on the project. So you will need to really master those two aspects, the technical aspects or the agentic tools from UiPath, but also on a broader level, like how do you find a good agentic use case? You're going to have a lot of questions that are very similar to what a business analyst would do in a project, which means that I highly recommend you to be familiar with the job of a business analyst. If you're just focusing on development, take a look. If you're not very familiar with what a business analyst is doing, take a look at the trainings on business analyst, for example. And if I have to tell you which certification would be the best to help you prepare for Agentic, is definitely the business analyst one. You're not going to get questions on the studio. You're not going to get technical questions about selectors. That's absolutely not the purpose of the certification. So if you want to prepare, again, the business analyst part is very important for that one. All right, so if we look at the certification in more details, so you can read the exam description here. It opens a PDF that is very insightful. It's going to tell you everything you need to know to prepare for the certification. In this document, they're going to show you the different sections that we have that are going to be covered by the certification. So if I scroll here, we have them here. And I'm going to make some comments on those different sections. So let me start with the first one, agentic AI and agentic automation concepts. What you need to master first is the differences between machine learning, LLMs, and GenAI. You will need to be very clear and you need to understand what's the differences between all of this. When you're going to use GenAI, when you're going to use machine learning, and what's the difference between LLM and GenAI, for example. Define agents and differentiate between GenAI and Agentic AI. Of course, it's not the same. Agentic AI is going to give you the possibility to perform some actions. The agents can use some tools, for example. GenAI is not something just like the conversation that you have on ChatGPT. Differentiate between agents and bots. Very important. You know that UiPath is coming from the world of RPA, the world of bots, and you need to be sure you understand the differences between an agent and a bot. The bot is very deterministic. An agent can help you in non-deterministic use cases. So be sure that you really understand the differences between the two. Identify the challenges of traditional automation. So if you're coming from the world of RPA, you probably know them. The limitations, like we cannot automate everything. If we have a high number of exceptions, it's going to be more difficult with traditional RPA. Articulate the benefits of agentic automation. So what an agent can do, and here they list a couple of these skills that an agent has. You really need to understand them and to be, for example, able to say on a use case, like they give you a use case and you know that the agent would be able to use this or this skill for this use case. For example, would be able to adapt to some changes on the process. Explain the concept of agentic orchestration. So this is related to Maestro. Maestro is one of the last products released by UiPath that can give you the possibility to orchestrate bots, humans, and agents. So you need to understand how this is working and why it makes sense, why is it useful for companies. And then you have a second aspect, which is more about agentic discovery, which is very similar to what a business analyst would do on traditional RPA when you go and look for the use cases for RPA. So here's about identifying and assessing the agentic automation potential of business processes. So usually you use a matrix where you check if it's a high priority use case or not. So you need to be sure that you know that. You're going to get some questions as well, very similar on as is, to be state. They're going to give you a process, as is, how it's going to be processed using agentic and so on. So be sure you're familiar with this terminology as indicated in the PDF. Design agent story through the five characteristics of an agent: trigger, instructions, context, human in the loop, and tool. So this is basically everything that you need to configure to build an agent. So we're going to talk about it a little bit later as well. And then prioritize agentic automation. That's the priority matrix that I was referring to before. Agent blueprint design, map business processes, steps to agent tasks. So you know that UiPath is using BPMN language. So you need to be sure that you have some hands-on experience using BPMN. And if you don't have, there is a specific website where you can play around and use it. It's called bpmn.uipath.com here. If you go here, you can basically map a process. So if you want to play around with BPMN, you can go there and then you can map processes, add new tasks, and so on. So I really encourage you to do it if you haven't done it in the past. So mapping business processes, identifying agent goals and evaluation criteria, defining the difference between system and user prompt. That's a key aspect. In system prompt, we give the goal, the role, the context for the agent. In the user prompt is more like role use case. Map context sources and grounding strategies, and select the tools. So here is covering all the aspects of the agent. So the tools, the context, you need to be sure that you're familiar with that. Context grounding, how does it work? Define it. Here they give you like 2 ways, and you need to be sure you understand those 2 ways on defining context. So you can use storage buckets, integration service. If you're not familiar with those capabilities, you really need to go to the UiPath documentation and check for it, and be sure that you understand when you're going to use storage buckets or when you're going to use integration service. Integration service is going to give you the possibility to connect to, for example, an Outlook, so you can retrieve an email, or these kind of things, or look at OneDrive and look at the documents stored in the OneDrive, and how this is going to be configured. Escalations, which is also one aspect that we can configure in an agent, which is optional. Explain the concept of human in the loop and how you're going to tell an agent to escalate and how the agent is going to escalate to a human. So you need to understand how to do this and what are the challenges of doing it. Agentic evaluations, which is something which is kind of new if you're coming from the world of RPA. Testing an agent is a bit different. So you need to be sure that you know how to evaluate the performances of an agent, and also how you test an agent. So define evaluation, differentiate between deterministic and model-graded evaluations. If this doesn't ring a bell to you, You really need to go to the academy and look for this aspect. There are different ways to test an agent. You can use deterministic evaluators and non-deterministic evaluator. And this is really key that you know when to use which evaluator. Prompt engineering, which is something which is broader, it's not specific to the UiPath products. How to craft a zero-shot prompt. So you need to know what's the difference between a zero-shot prompt, few-shot prompt, what is chain of thought, when it makes sense to use chain of thought prompting, when you want to use few-shot prompting, how you're going to write a few-shot prompt, for example, how you're going to format the prompt. You need to be very, very strong on this aspect, which goes beyond the UiPath platform. So if you're coming from the world of Gen AI, this is something that you already probably master. Clarity, so these are also the best practices. Apply clarity, specificity, conciseness for best practices. So what are the best practices in prompting? So this is also something which is very key. UiPath platform components and integrations. So if you're already using the platform, UiPath platform, you're not going to be lost here. Be sure that you're familiar with Studio Web if you're coming from the studio, the desktop version of the studio. And then everything related to input, outputs, how you create connections, how you're going to map connectors, so everything related to the platform. Orchestration with Maestro, so BPMN, I already mentioned it. And then service task, how you're going to invoke an agent from Studio Web, for example. How you're going to connect an agent so that it's going to trigger a bot, an RPA workflow. This is also something that you need to know how to do it. And then Autopilot, which is the embedded assistant in all the UiPath products now. So that's about the topics. To prepare for the certification, they recommend you to go to the academy and to follow this training, which is what I did. And I have to say, it really helps. It really helped me a lot to cover all of these aspects and also to learn new things on the way. So I really encourage you to do this academy training. I'm going to show you in details. And then there is a practice test that we're also going to do together. Regarding the exam, it's 90 minutes. You get 60 questions. So you have more than 1 minute per question, which is quite good. Usually you have enough time, 70% for passing score. And you have 4 options and there is only one correct response, which is the format that UiPath has for all of the different certifications. Okay, so let's look at the academy training. I have it open here. It's, like 13 hours in total to go through the training. Of course, you can go a little bit faster. I did it in 1 day. I covered everything. So you just need 1 day to do this. So it's not really much time to prepare, especially if you're already familiar with those concepts of Agentic, Gen AI, and the UiPath platform. The first part of this training is about the Studio Web. So if you're already familiar with the studio, you're not going to learn a lot of things here, especially you already know variables, arguments, the differences between the two, when to use them, and so on. But what I really would encourage you is to be sure that you have an up-to-date knowledge of Studio Web and what you can do with Studio Web. Because sometimes, in some companies, you're not able to use Studio Web, you're still on the studio, and Studio Web is a little bit different on some aspects. So just be sure that you have an up-to-date knowledge of Studio Web. If not, just go through those trainings quickly and you're going to be fine. The most interesting part is, of course, the agentic modules that you have here. And on the first one, they show you how to build an agent, and on other modules, they are going to ask you to build an agent. I would definitely recommend that you do it. Don't skip this part. Play around with Agent Builder so you can really have some hands-on experience and see the limits and see the challenges when you want to build an agent. This is really going to help you a lot on this exam. It's associate level. They are not going to ask you very deep questions about the tool, but you really need to have a good overview and some experience using it. I mean, if you have that, I'm sure you're going to pass the exam. Agentic prompt engineering, so you're going to have a module about how to prompt, the best practices, as you saw in the PDF, how to configure context, escalations, and how to evaluate your agent. these are the two important modules, in my opinion, very important ones. At the end, you can take an assessment, which is very interesting and is going to help you also check your understanding and your knowledge on UiPath Agentic. Okay. They don't really cover Maestro on those modules. So what I did was to look for a specific Maestro module. They don't have right now. Maybe they're going to add new modules later. When you search for Maestro, you get a BPMN training, which I highly encourage. If you are not familiar with BPMN, you know to know the basics, and this is what is covered in this module. So if you're not familiar with BPMN, do it. It's also going to be useful for the exam. Okay. Good. So now let's do the practice test. I have it open here. I'm just going to create an account here. You just need to put an email address. So I'm just going to write a name here. I'm gonna put an email, and then you just need to indicate your country. Your relationship to UiPath, and then you can start testing your knowledge. So we are going to do it together. I like to do it because you can review and see what was your incorrect answers, but they are not going to give you and explain the corrections. So that's why I'm going to do it with you. I think it's going to be useful. So we have 39 questions, so not 60 like in the real exam, but I think it's a very good exercise to check if you're ready for the certification. All right, so let me start. I'm going to read out loud the question and go through the different options. And of course, you can pause the video or you can just try to think about what is the right answer to the question. All right, so let's go. What is a key limitation of traditional automation systems that rely solely on robots and humans? So here's a question about differences between RPA and Agentic, and limitations of RPA. So why Agentic is interesting. So they have built-in capabilities for complex decision making and learning from new situations. They can easily handle unstructured, exception-heavy workflows without human intervention. So here we are talking about limitations, right? Not about the Agentic skills. They struggle to adapt to dynamic, changing environments due to their reliance on structured logic and fixed rules. They use a probabilistic approach to make decisions based on patterns and real-time data. So here, limitation of traditional automation systems, as you probably know, if you're coming from the world RPA, is that it's very hard to make them adapt to changing environments because it's very deterministic. Your client asks you to configure an LLM to answer general trivia questions. Who is the current president of France? You don't include examples of correctly formatted answers in your prompt, but you expect the model to return concise and accurate response. What approach should you choose for this task? So here question is about your understanding and the differences between few shot, chain of thought, zero shot prompting. So here they say no example. So that means it's not few shot prompting, and you want to have the answer right away. So you're not going to ask the LLM to explain the reasoning behind. So this is zero shots prompting. What's the name of the missing component marked with the star? So here's the red piece. It's not an easy question if you're not coming from the world of UiPath. So this is basically what they call the UiPath AI trust layer, which is kind of an AI layer that is going to govern all of their AI products that they have under it. So that's called the trust layer. You can look in the documentation if you want to learn more about it. What's the primary purpose of tools when used by agents? Tools are added to agents to automate all reasoning and planning, replacing the need for prompts or outline objectives. Of course, as you can imagine, this is wrong. Tools give agents access to business data and let them perform actions based on objectives defined in the prompt. Tools are primarily used to enable agents to bypass reasoning and perform actions directly without any objectives or planning. Tools are designed solely for storing data without offering agents the ability to execute actions or interact with applications. So tools are kind of the hands of the agents. This is how they're going to be able to perform some actions, and also they can get some data directly using the tools. So tools can be RPA workflow, but you can also be an API call using integration services to get the data. What must be configured beforehand to ensure that Maestro can handle and use downloaded files correctly? Users only need a generic data entity. Maestro will automatically infer whether it supports file storage. Data fabric must be enabled in the tenant, and at least one entity must include a field that supports file storage. The tenant must enable a dedicated Files API endpoint in addition to Data Fabric for file downloads to work. Data Fabric must be enabled, and the user must manually create file storage folders in the project directory. So Data Fabric is something which is quite recent on the UiPath platform, and it has been created for this purpose that they ask in the question. So here it's going to be Data Fabric must be enabled. Again, look at the documentation if you want to learn more about Data Fabric and how it works. In a BPMN diagram, which element is typically used to represent a decision point that can be mapped to conditional logic in an agent's workflow during the import process in UiPath task capture? Decision point in BPMN, let's take a look. That's what we have here. And this is called an exclusive gateway. So again, if you don't know the response here, I really encourage you that you take the BPMN UiPath Academy training, or you look at the documentation on the internet. What's the purpose of the expression editor in configuring a service task in UiPath? So expression editor, if you use the studio, you know what this is. This is where you can, that's one of the answers here, where you're going to be able to write expressions for your needs. So here we have to directly modify the XML configuration of the service task, to manage user permissions, to write complex expressions for element properties with intelligent code completion, to test the workflow executions in real time. So you're going to write complex expressions, and here you can also use autopilot for the expressions. If you don't know exactly how to write the expression, you can just type it like in a prompt, and then it's going to give you the expression. A business process involves reviewing a document, during which the execution must wait to receive a confirmation message from the user before continuing to the next step. Which BPMN event type is most appropriate to model this scenario? Start message event to trigger the process when the user submits confirmation. So here's about waiting for a confirmation message, so we are not going to start anything. Intermediate message event catching, placed inline or on a boundary. Intermediate timer event to delay the process until confirmation is received, and message event to signal process completion after receiving confirmation. So again, this is a BPMN question. If you have access to Maestro, I would also encourage you to play around and try to build a workflow there, so you can experiment what you have here in the question. So here we want to catch a message. So we are going to use what's called the boundary to place this event. Good. When designing an engine process in UiPath Studio, a blank design canvas is displayed with various icons on the left toolbar as shown in the screenshot. What's the first step to enable the agent to pursue a goal by initiating steps using pre-built skills? Use the app activity to define a form for user input. Upload the document to be processed using OCR. Begin with the goal node to define the agent's objective. Drag and drop a bot from the orchestrator panel. So here we want to enable the agent to pursue goal. So we are going to start with the goal node. There are some questions. You can guess the right answer just reading at the question and looking at the options, of course. A developer is implementing evaluations for a document processing agent and must choose between deterministic evaluators and the LLM as a judge evaluator. The agent needs to assess invoices where item descriptions vary slightly, such as laptop versus portable computer. Which evaluator type should the developer use in this case? That's a very good question. you need to know the 4 evaluators that we have and the differences between them. Look at the documentation. I have the page open here. They show it to you here, and they explain also the differences between them. So here we need to check for semantic similarity. So that's the one we're going to be using. What are the different options? Exact match. It's going to check exactly the same output. Here it's of course not the same. It could be laptop or something else, computer and so on. JSON similarity is going to check the structure of the JSON files. And then we also have something else, which is trajectory evaluator. So here, if I go back to the question, we need to check laptop and this, so it's going to be LLM as a judge. It's not going to be JSON, it's not going to be exact match, and not a deterministic evaluator. So be sure that you know that. That's very key. What's the highlighted task type? So look at this here. We have something with some kind of a spark star that we also have on the new UiPath logo. This is the Agentic icon. This one here with the cog is the RPA workflow. A developer is creating a prompt for an agent that turns informal messages into formal replies. What's the most effective way to structure a few short examples for this purpose? So here they show you different ways. We are giving here an example. Pair informal messages with short one-word response. Just give a few outputs and ask the LLM to imitate the tone. Use uppercase letters to emphasize tone change. That would be interesting to try to test this. Yeah, so here's about best practice. What's the best practice in writing a few short? And as you probably know, this is the best practice. You explain input, output, and you put some examples like this one. What step is necessary before adding an escalation recipient in the assignment section? You must deploy an app to your tenant before selecting a recipient for the escalation. You must enable agent memory before adding an escalation recipient. I don't see why. You can assign recipients freely without configuring or deploying apps for escalations. Specify how each outcome should be handled by the agent before assigning a recipient. So we want to add an escalation, and if you go through the training, you're going to see that very often they are going to be using an app to do this. So must deploy an app is the right answer here. When is recommended to create evaluations during the agent development process? That's a very good question. I mean, I got it wrong the first time I took the practice test. Immediately after designing the agent, regardless of whether the use case or arguments are stable, at any stage of the development process, as evaluations can be adjusted later with minimal effort, after exploring evaluation sets from other agents to avoid starting from scratch, once the argument, use case, prompt, tools, and context are stable or finalized to minimize rework. So what's your guess here? It's not an easy question because if you're coming from RPA, I think it's different in RPA. You try to prepare the test to test your bot a lot in advance to be sure that you have enough use cases, that you can create them, that you have access to that, and to everything you need to create the test. But here, the recommended moment is when everything is ready, basically. So that's the right answer. And they're going to tell you in the UiPath Academy training. When systems combine adaptability, intelligent decision-making, goal-oriented execution, and multitask coordination, what is achieved? Focus on specialized tasks at the expense of the dynamic adaptability. A system that emphasizes scalability while reducing complexity handling, improve resilience, agility, and effective management of interconnected processes, enhance ability to handle predictable operations with limited flexibility. So here it's about combining all of this. And if we combine all of this, we are going to improve resilience, agility, management of interconnected processes. The support agent needs to check product stocks level across multiple warehouses using a product ID entered by the user. Which tool is the most appropriate for this task and follow UiPath naming convention? So they are going to tell you what's the UiPath recommended naming convention in the UiPath Academy. So you're going to have, you may have a different naming convention in your company, so it really depends. But then you can also check what you would answer to this question. I mean, this is the UiPath recommendation here. It's about checking products, so that's why we chose the check one. Why is using direct and specific language considered the best practice in prompt engineering when designing prompts for an AI model? So that's about the best practices. Why do we need to be specific? Direct and specific language eliminates the need for iterative refinement of prompts, producing efficient responses in the first attempt. That would be great, but this is not the reality. Direct and specific language ensures the AI will handle complex reasoning tasks without requiring further guidance or detailed examples. Yeah, maybe not. Direct and specific language guarantees AI will always provide correct responses. Of course, you can guess that this is wrong, even without additional context. Direct and specific language minimize ambiguity, ensuring the AI can generate responses that align with the intended outcome. Yes, the objective is that we want to minimize ambiguity. So AI is going to give us better responses. In UiPath Studio, the Create New menu presents the options Agent, Agentic Process, RPA Workflow, and API Workflow to build an automation that independently pursues the business goal, such as processing orders. Which option should be selected? So here, we want something that is independent. So it's not going to be, and pursues a business goal. So business goal, we give the business goal, it's not going to be RPA, it's going to be agentic, but it has to be independent. So only one thing, so one agent. We're not going to build a process here. Two important keywords in the question. Which component do you need to select so an agent can involve a human when assistance is required? Context rounding, shared orchestrator queue, robot log level setting, or an action app deployed in Action Center. We got a similar question before, I guess. So this is going to be the action app. The rest is completely not relevant when we want to involve a human. What's the purpose of evaluation results in UiPath terminology? Evaluation results assign performance scores and rating without the need for further manual debugging or analysis. Of course, we will still need to do this. Evaluation results define the rules and conditions used to assess the agent's output during evaluation runs. Evaluation results organize evaluations and evaluators into sets designed to simplify scoring and streamline assessments. Evaluation results include traces from completed evaluations to measure accuracy, efficiency, and decision-making during runs. Yes, that's what you're going to see when you're using evaluation results. So that's the right one. Again, if you're not able to answer this question, go here, you look at the documentation, they're going to explain everything. It's very well detailed, very well, very useful to help you prepare for the certification. And there are not that many pages in the end, so it's not going to take you too much time. How can you configure input arguments for a service task in UiPath? Creating a new workflow for each input argument. Using the properties panel to define inputs and outputs. By using the debug panel. By directly editing the XML tab for of the service task. So we want to configure input arguments. As you probably know, we are going to use the property panels for that in a service task. How can integration service be utilized with context rounding in UiPath? Integration service is not related to context rounding and is exclusively used for robot execution scheduling. So if you know integration services, you know that this is not true. Integration service is only used for orchestrating processes and cannot import data for context rounding workflows. This is wrong. Integration service can connect document storage systems to UiPath, allowing seamless data import into orchestrator for indexing and retrieval via context rounding activities. Integration service requires manual configuration for every query and does not support automated data indexing or syncing. Yes, so integration service, you can connect a system to UiPath, You can put an index on top of it, and then you can configure your context grounding. This is how it works. According to the best practices for prompt structure, what is the recommended way to tell an agent how to format its output? Describe the required response schema and avoid hard-coding layout directives. That's a good practice. Output arguments already govern the final structure. Omit any mention of output format entirely. UiPath agents will always auto-format responses without guidance. Include full example inputs and expected outputs inside the prompt so the agent can mimic them word for word. Probably not what you want. Embed an example directly in the instructions so every answer follows that exact layout. Yeah, maybe we don't want we don't want to have always the same layout. So that's the right one. We don't want to hard code, and we need to put it in the response schema. We need to describe it. How can agentic orchestration continuously optimize workflows? By using manual observations to identify workflow changes and process bottlenecks, by designing static workflows and reducing the need for continuous monitoring, by leveraging real-time data to monitor workflows, identify bottlenecks, and proactively improve agent performance, by asking AI agents to conduct random tests to determine inefficiency in the workflow with no human involvement. If you look at Maestro, you can see real-time data. You can see where is the data in the entire workflow, which is very useful. And you can also see bottlenecks a little bit like in process mining. You have a view where you can see what are the steps that are that are slow, taking really a lot of time. So that's the right option. You can look for Maestro demos as well on YouTube. You're going to find some, and they're going to help you for the exam. What enables Gen AI to produce content across diverse formats such as text, audio, and 3D elements? Gen AI relies on deep learning models designed to learn patterns and structures from varied datasets encompassing multiple data types. Gen AI's output versatility is primarily driven by pre-programmed rules specific to each individual content format. Gen AI's ability to produce content across formats stems solely from its capacity to repurpose previously generated outputs, rather than understanding or processing patterns in the data itself. The ability to handle multiple formats comes from a unique algorithm hand-coded to create outputs across all content types seamlessly. So this is more like about Gen AI. How is Gen AI working? And Gen AI relies on deep learning models. So this is how it works. How can the agent be better guided during runtime? By adding multiple activities to make sure multiple scenarios are covered, the agent can be better guided based on the used prompts. By adding multiple processes to make sure multiple scenarios are covered, by customizing the default description of each activity used by the agent. This is really important. That's something which is also, I would say, different from RPA. When you build an agent, it's very good practice to describe each activity, because the agent is going to be like acting a bit like a human. It's going to try to read and understand when to use each activity. So be sure it's good practice that you describe each activity that the agent is going to be using. What should you do if you modify the input or output arguments of your agent after creating evaluation sets? Adjust the evaluations to align with the new arguments to ensure continued validity and coverage. Only update the agent, not the evaluations. Delete all evaluation sets and start over. Leave the evaluation sets and change. So if you are modifying this, you will need to adjust the evaluations. This is also a question about evaluation and how to prepare them and how to change them. How does Autopilot for Everyone ensure that the insights it surfaces are both relevant to the user's requests and actionable for decision making? So if you used Autopilot to create an agent, you probably know the answer here. Its AI-powered architecture guarantees every output is universally applicable to all business scenarios, making further contextualization unnecessary. Of course, this is not true. It pairs context over understanding of the prompt with comprehensive data processing and then recommends next step. That's what it's going to do when you use it. It draws only on cross-application compatibility, assuming data pulled from multiple programs will inherently be insightful. Each relies exclusively on process optimization, learning over time so that any insight eventually becomes relevant without additional analysis. So this is how it works. It pairs context over understanding of the prompt, and then it's making some recommendation. How does the start and wait for an agent feature handle output from the agent? Outputs are only accessible through separate API call after the process completes. Stores all outputs in a temporary cache, which must be manually cleared before starting the process. Outputs are made available as variables for use in subsequent process steps. Outputs are only accessible if the agent is part of the same sub-process. That would be a shame. So yes, we are going to use the outputs. We are going to use the variables for that. That's something which is, I guess, quite obvious. Which input method is selected by default when you add an integration service activity as a tool? Static, prompt, argument, clear value. So by default, what you need to know is that it's going to be prompt. So if you want to pass an argument, you will need to change it. By default, it's prompt. That's I would say not really obvious, but this is the way it is. What's the correct structure of the UiPath platform regarding agent types? So here we have different schemas. We got bots that are governing agents, and we have difference here, bots and agents. So agents are going to be under the different agent types are under agent. And yes, that's what we have now in the automation workflows. We have on the same level agents, bots, and people. And that's really the UiPath approach to Agentic. Agentic is a combination of all of this, and this is how it makes, how we make the best of each skills of the agents, bots, and people. And if you look at the agents, you have different kind of agents as well. You have the UiPath system agents, such as Autopilot, Healing Agent, that are created by UiPath and embedded in different UiPath products that are going to make your life easier when you want to build something or debug with Healing Agent. You have the UiPath build agents with Agent Builder, which is the low-code interface to build an agent. But you can also code agents. You can use UiPath SDK to create coded agents. And what is also very interesting here is that you can bring your own agent to the platform. You can, for example, create an agent using LangGraph, and then you can call the agent and connect it to Maestro and to the UiPath platform. So that these are the external agents. So that's important to know as well. Why is specificity important when designing a prompt? Also good practice. Why do we want to have specificity as a good practice? It should be avoided to allow the model more creativity in interpreting and performing the task. I'm not sure we want to have the models creative. Specificity ensures the instructions and tasks are well described, leading to better results matching the desired output. Yes, that's exactly why it's important. Specificity guarantees inclusion of all details in the prompt, even if they are not relevant to the task. We don't want to write something that is not relevant to the task. That's not a good practice. Specificity limits the effectiveness of prompts and prevents experimentation with different formats. No, specificity is a good thing. So that's the right one. Again, question on the best practice. You need to know what are the good practices. A company wants to generate realistic product images, write marketing copy, create promotional videos, all using AI. Which type of AI should they rely on? Gen AI, reinforcement learning AI, LLM, statistical AI. So here again, question about AIs, different kind of AIs that we can use. Here we want to create images, videos, so it's going to be Gen AI. LLM is about more like processing natural language, and the rest is different. Creating content, of course, is Gen AI. Which statement best explains how agentic automation differs from traditional rule-based automation? So that's a question about differences between bots and agents. Agentic automation enables robots to adapt, learn, and make decisions in dynamic environments. Which is when the bot cannot do that. Agentic automation ensures bots are deterministic in their decision making. The agentic are not governing the bots. We saw it in the question before. Agentic automation uses predefined scripts, but with faster execution speed. Agentic automation reduces human interaction while relying on strict coding rules. No, it's the first one. Can agents learn from experience and improve their performance over time? No, we need to do it manually. Yes, but we need to supervise them. No, they are limited. Yes, they have learning capabilities. Agents have learning capabilities, and they also have they have memory capabilities as well. When creating an agent story, what of the following is defining for the agent role? The agent's role is irrelevant when creating an agent story. The agent's role could include faster response time, higher accuracy rates, and improved customer satisfaction. The agent's role ensures the agent can integrate into workflows. The role gives context to the automation's core responsibility. Context is very important. So that's why we need to define the agent role. Which of the following represent a high priority use case in a matrix? Typically, a business analyst question, right? You need to know the priority matrix and what's the first use cases that we are going to address based on the matrix. A use case with high impact but minimal feasibility, assuming the business benefit alone justifies overcoming complexity. A use case with moderate feasibility but low impact, assuming feasibility outweighs business value prioritization. A use case with significant potential for success and organizational impact while prioritizing feasibility. Yeah, we need to have success, but we need to be sure about the feasibility. A use case prioritized solely because it's technically feasible, even if it contributes minimal business impact. No, that's not a high priority use case. That's something you would do at the end. So you focus on high business value and the minimum complexity. Which data type is supported for both input and output arguments when you expose a process as an agent tool? Number, decimal, data type, string. So here the agent, it's a lot about text, so it's going to be string. When you create the agent, we talked about how to describe the activities, it's going to be a lot of text, so by default it's going to be string. And last question. You're part of an IT team that spends a lot of time manually monitoring logs, detecting issues, and searching for fixes. Creating detailed tickets is also time consuming, making it harder to resolve problems quickly. How can agent help? I love this question. I love this question because this is what you're going to get in the exam. You're going to get a lot of questions with a use case, and then you will need to tell, is it a good use case for Agentic? Or is it a good case for RPA? And if it's a good fit for Agentic, what are the skills that the agent is going to be using? And here we are going to see that in the different options. The agent monitors log files but requires IT staff to analyze issues manually. No, an agent can do the analysis. So this one is out. The agent monitors and downloads logs file, uses an LLM to analyze the files for issue. Yes. Searches for fixes, create tickets with error details and solutions, alerts IT staff. Exactly. An agent can escalate. An agent can create tickets, has the tools capability, so it can, for example, here use an integration service connection to create a ticket in Salesforce, for example, or ServiceNow, or it can use an RPA to do it in the internal system. And then, of course, it can search for fixes in documents, use an LLM to analyze the files, and so on. So these are the skills of an agent, and that's why this option is the right one here. Good. So that was the test. I think some of the questions are very good for you to check that you have understood all the concepts. In the exam, again, I think I covered everything. You're going to get questions about Agent Builder and how to build an agent, so the different components of Agent Builder. You're going to get questions about the best practices, but also questions on scenarios. So you need to be sure that you're able to say, based on a specific scenario, what is a good agentic use case, what is a good RPA use case, and how an agent is going to help. Okay? Good. I hope this video is useful for you. And also very curious to know if this is going to help you pass the exam. So if you pass the exam, feel free to share some feedback, drop a comment in the comment section. I will be very happy to hear that you passed the exam and that it was helping you in doing it. Thank you, and see you next time for more videos. Bye-bye.